What if I told you we're missing a whole chapter of human history? Not just a few artifacts here and there, but in fact, an entire civilization wiped from the record. A civilization with technology we can't explain, architecture we can't duplicate, and rulers so tall they might not have even been human. We're told they never existed. But maps, ruins, and buried cities tell another story. These clues point to something bigger, something older, something we were never meant to find. Let's talk about the mystery of Tartaria. Walk through the oldest parts of almost any major city and you'll notice the clues if you know what to look for. Some buildings just don't match the history we've been told. There are cathedrals with spires so tall and carvings so detailed, it's hard to believe they were made without modern tools. Tools we're told didn't exist at the time. Star-shaped fortresses with perfectly symmetrical angles, as if they were designed from above by someone with a bird's eye, or perhaps God's eye view. Domes and towers topped with copper that shine in the sunlight, almost like they were made to catch some kind of signal. And yet, according to mainstream history, these were built by men with hand tools, wooden scaffolds, and horse-drawn carts. Somehow, that was enough to create massive granite columns, seamless stone arches, and metalwork that would be hard to copy even with modern factories. Look closer, and the mystery grows. Some of these buildings have deep scorch marks, with stone warped or melted as if it had been exposed to intense heat. Others are buried halfway into the ground, with former entrances and windows now sitting below the street. In some places, whole floors are hidden beneath our feet. Why build such beauty if no one was meant to see it? Some researchers believe the answer is simple. These buildings weren't constructed in the 1800s at all. They were uncovered, excavated from the remains of a civilization lost to disaster, then refurbished, and given a new backstory to fit the rewritten history of a new age. The photographic record from the late 1800s and early 1900s is where things get strange. City after city appears in crisp black and white images, showing broad avenues lined with elaborate stone and marble buildings, fountains, and parks that look like they've been here for ages. Everything is complete, polished, and ready for life. And yet, where is everyone? Where are the people? In many photos, you might see only a few figures, not the busy crowds you'd expect in a thriving city. Sometimes, the only people in sight are workers, not building new structures, but digging out buried lower floors, clearing piles of dirt, or taking apart damaged sections. It doesn't look like construction. It looks like someone moving into a place that was already there, almost like settlers stumbling upon a fully built city and slowly making it their own. Some researchers believe that's exactly what happened, that after a great disaster ended the last civilization, survivors found these cities, repaired them, and added their own touches before claiming them as new. From the 1500s through the 1700s, European cartographers consistently labeled a massive region, stretching from Eastern Europe across Siberia and into Mongolia as Tartaria. This wasn't just an empty, unexplored space. The maps showed mountain ranges, rivers, towns, and even borders. They even divided it into areas with specific names, like Muscovite Tartary, Chinese Tartary, and Independent Tartary. These maps were created by skilled professionals, whose accuracy in other regions we still trust today. But by the early 1800s, the name Tartaria disappears. Not just from maps, but from history books, encyclopedias, and public memory. Historians say Tartary was simply a placeholder for lands Europeans hadn't explored in detail, and that it faded away as exploration advanced. But that explanation raises its own questions. Why would a term used for centuries disappear almost overnight? Why would subregions with specific names and boundaries be erased completely instead of just renamed? And why do so many of these old maps show what looks like infrastructure, roads, towns, and fortifications in places where no advanced civilization is supposed to have existed? It feels less like a natural change and more like the name was deliberately removed, along with the memory of whatever civilization it may have belonged to. The deeper you look into 19th century archives, the stranger the story gets. Old newspapers from America, Europe, and Asia contain reports of enormous skeletons unearthed in burial mounds, stone tombs, and even sealed chambers beneath old buildings. Some were measured at 8, 9, even 10 feet tall. They were often buried with weapons or tools so large that no modern human could wield them. In some cases, these finds were photographed, documented, and sent to museums, only to disappear into storage or be lost completely. In others, the remains were quietly reburied with no public explanation. Those who believe in the Tartaria theory suggest these giants may have been its rulers, descendants of an ancient bloodline with knowledge and abilities far beyond our own. If true, erasing them from history would have been a way to erase the legitimacy of the civilization itself. After all, if we're convinced such beings never existed, we're far less likely to believe in the world they once ruled. One of the strongest arguments for Tartaria's advancement is found in its architecture. All over the world, in structures supposedly built independently, we see the same repeating elements: tall spires, domes, copper-topped roofs, and decorations that look a lot like antennas. Historians say these are just decorative, but copper is an excellent conductor of electricity, and many of these pieces are placed exactly where you would put them if you were trying to collect or send out energy, right at the highest points of the building, often lined up with others nearby. Some believe these buildings were part of a global energy network, harvesting the Earth's natural electromagnetic field to provide wireless power. The same design patterns appear again and again, as if the builders all had access to the same blueprint, despite being separated by continents and oceans. It's as if the knowledge of how to build these structures survived a great catastrophe, but the understanding of how they worked was lost. The structures remain, but the science behind them has been lost. Many researchers believe Tartaria's end came with a disaster, known as the Mud Flood. They say that within the last 200 to 300 years, a sudden, massive event buried entire cities under several feet of soil and debris. In some places, whole neighborhoods were swallowed, leaving only rooftops and upper floors visible. Even today, you can walk through older parts of cities around the world and see the signs: windows sitting below street level, doors that open directly into dirt, and modern streets built on top of older, perfectly preserved ones. If such a flood happened, it could explain how a civilization could disappear almost overnight. It would also explain why so many of its buildings are half buried, with their original ground floors hidden under layers of earth. Some believe this disaster was followed by what's called the Great Reset, a deliberate rewriting of history to erase Tartaria's existence, claim its architecture as the work of the new rulers, and slowly reintroduce its surviving technologies under new names. Some researchers believe the world wars were not only fought over land and power, but also to erase the last signs of a hidden civilization. They say World War II was the final step, a global effort to wipe Tartaria from the map. During these wars, whole cities were destroyed. Historic districts that had stood for hundreds of years were turned to rubble. Palaces, monuments, and ornate public buildings were gone in days. When rebuilding started, the replacements looked nothing like the originals. Instead of stone domes and tall spires, the new buildings were plain concrete, glass, and steel. Anything that might connect us to an older, advanced culture was gone. Some think this was no accident. If you remove the buildings, you remove the proof. If you remove the proof, people stop asking questions. Whether planned or not, the effect was the same. By the mid-1900s, much of the old world was gone, replaced by a modern landscape with no visible link to the mysterious past. Mainstream historians dismiss all of this as pseudoscience. They say Tartary was nothing more than a geographic label. They argue the architecture can be explained by normal building methods, and that stories of giants were either hoaxes or mistakes. But believers point out how neatly the pieces fit together. Maps showing a vast named region that disappears overnight, photographs of empty but complete cities, buildings with buried lower levels found on every continent, the same unusual designs repeating in architecture worldwide, and historical accounts of giants. Even if Tartaria was never a single empire, these anomalies still need an explanation, and perhaps that's why the theory refuses to die. It speaks to a deep suspicion that our history has been edited, that what we know is only part of the story, and that somewhere out there, the truth is still waiting to be uncovered. Whether you believe Tartaria was a real empire or just a symbol for a forgotten chapter of history, one thing is clear. There are holes in our past. Too many names have been erased. Too many streets are buried. Too many stories are explained away with vague references to fires, accidents, or coincidence. If Tartaria was real, even partially, then what else might be out there, hidden in plain sight? And if it wasn't, then why does so much of our world feel like a puzzle that doesn't match the picture on the box? History has a way of coming back. Sometimes all it takes is curiosity, a willingness to ask questions, and the courage to look beneath the surface, literally. Because maybe the truth isn't gone at all. Maybe it's just buried.